Welcome to the podcast, Chris Graham and Rod Mullins. Rod got to spend the weekend down in Bristol, truck race, an Xfinity Series race, the regular season championship race for Xfinity Series, and then the first round playoff cutoff to get from 16 to 12 at the Cup Series level.
Mhm.
And so, Rod, you were down there, you got to see some good racing, and then on Saturday night, I guess, I mean, you can't fault Kyle Larson for being dominant, but that was not the race we expected with the playoffs being on the line there.
Well, this is one of those things that I have talked about before, and I've said, racing is a team sort of effort. It's not just the driver itself, although we tend to look at things of it's the driver, he's out there doing all the action, but actually it was the team that kept him in this race and kept him just about to the point of, unstoppable in this race. And I use the comparison, and I have to attribute that opening in the article that I sent to you guys that was published about the old football coach, about talking about dominating on both sides of the ball. Considering it was Saturday night, there were a bunch of college football games going on. I thought, this is great. And Coach Bill Ramsire, the late Coach Bill Ramsire, had kind of put it in my head a long time ago when I was calling UVA-wise football games on the radio. We have to dominate on both sides of the ball. We have to dominate. So in this case, I looked at it as Kyle Larson dominating when it came to the driving part, and then the pit crew and everybody dominating in the pits and making sure that this team, everything came together for him. And it did. I mean, they never let up. It was just like the old adage of taking that knife and putting it in and then twisting it to make sure that it's over with. This was over with probably at 250, 275 laps. I mean, unless something really seriously went wrong. But Kyle Larson just shows what a great race car driver he is, and how well he has rebounded from some bad luck here in the last couple of weeks.
He took the lead on lap 33. He led for 462 laps. So he
Yep.
pretty much led 462 of the last 466 laps or so. Um,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And not only that, but he lapped three playoff drivers, pretty much, they're in succession. I mean, he didn't just like lead this whole race. He was literally running circles around good drivers.
He actually surpassed, of all things, he actually surpassed Dale Earnhardt Sr. in the domination of a race. He led the most laps of any driver in a Hendrick Motorsports car during a race, during the time that the race was going on. He turned heads. And I mean, he said, once he was in the media center, once again, he said, this is my favorite track. I love this track. Even though he was the one that said, I love this track, but I really wish they wouldn't put dirt on it. But he loves Bristol, and he just literally dominated. And yeah, he passed some guys that were, playoffs and everything else. And then you had one driver that he had lapped that was fighting with everything he had in him to stay on that cut line, or at least a little bit above that cut line, until he could make it. And then you had one driver who ended up, it cost him all because of what, tenths or hundredths of a second, and have a little bit of going fast, or that much over the speed limit, I should say, that much of the speed limit going down pit road. And it cost Martin Truex Jr. a chance at the playoffs.
Truex Jr., Ty Gibbs were eliminated, and also two of the guys that Larson had lapped on his way to dominance, Brad Keselowski and Harrison Burton, were eliminated. Burton had the hardest road of all the guys. He was
All right.
16th going in and was way back in the points. But yeah, talk about that Truex situation some more. I mean, what heartbreak for a guy in his last season as an active driver, at least, to have something come down to a technicality, essentially.
Well, I mean, they were racing so good in the first two stages. They raced really well. I mean, they got a lot of points out of this. He even said so himself, talking about the fact, he's going to retire at the end of the season, but he would have had to run second or third to make it all the way through. And he was there on the cusp of it, so to speak. But then he just asked the question. He says, what, who knows what would have happened if we'd been able to hold on and stuff. I wish we could have seen if we could have gone through all this stuff. But here he said this was something that gutted his team more than anything else. They worked so hard. They put in a lot this past season, just in the last 3 weeks. And he agreed with this. They've been snake bit. They've had trouble for the last 3 weeks. And then 0.09 miles per hour over the speed road or the pit road speed tolerance killed him. And I mean, this is like your worst nightmare. This is like the Virginia State Police on pit road with their radar guns, and they get you, not giving you the 5 extra miles an hour over the speed limit, that cushion, but hammering you at 0.09 miles per hour over what the speed is supposed to be down on pit road. And they were close all day, but the thing was, it is, as Truex said, it didn't matter. He said he just, more than anything, he felt terrible for his team out of this whole thing.
Yeah, that's the trooper tapping on your window. Hey, sir, do you know how fast you're going? Yes, sir. I was going 71. Well, the speed limit's 70. So
Yeah.
that's what that does there.
That's what it is.
And Ty Gibbs also had a penalty
Right.
for speeding on pit road. And that set him back. He ended up finishing 15th, and he missed the playoffs by 11 points. So I don't know if it was just that, but I mean, when it sets you back like that, you have to fight through Bristol. That could have been a big factor for him.
Yeah, it could have been. And then on the flip side of this, you had Daniel Suarez, who was, really put back there from the start on the starting grid, and then trying to fight for position all night to stay up there. And I mean, he literally fought, scratched, clawed, did everything that he could to keep from going down a lap or two or three or whatever it may have been to, Kyle Larson as they're driving. But, here it was. I think he admitted after the race, Daniel Suarez said it was a struggle. He said since they unloaded the car on Friday for the first practice, they didn't have speed. And he said with a short amount of practice, which that's true, they had a short amount of practice this time around, which also addressed another issue, which we'll talk about here a little bit later on. The qualifying, going to the race, if you don't have speed coming out of the trailer, it's very, very difficult to bring it all together and bring it back to speed and get where they need to be at. But he was bumping people because he just did not want to be denied a chance at that cut line and getting into the playoffs. So he makes it into the second round of the playoffs and stuff, but literally on the skin of his teeth, and also how well he's been driving most of the season. I mean, he's been up there in the top 20 several times, and I think that meant a lot for him to be in the in contention there for the second round of the playoffs.
So Larson wins, Chase Elliott second, Bubba Wallace, a non-playoff driver, third, Denny Hamlin fourth, Christopher Bell fifth. Hamlin, we talked about this last week, needed to have a good race because of that penalty his team had incurred from something back earlier in the year with an engine issue. And so Hamlin, who, maybe he wasn't near the cut line, but he could have certainly fallen below with a disappointing finish. He ran near the front most of the night. He did what he needed to do.
Yeah, and at one point there were people in the pits saying that some of the comments that he had made earlier could very well come back to bite him, and they almost did. I mean, he was not running as well at one point early on in the race, but there he was coming up through the pack, and he was starting to get in the groove a little bit. But this sport is not just a war of words per se. It is how well your team is going to rise to the occasion to go and to either back the driver on this or to support the driver, however they're going to do this. And if they're all in like they were with, Kyle Larson's team, it makes the difference. The same thing with Chase Elliott. They were there towards the front. I've got to say the same thing about Denny Hamlin. The team was there. They just didn't quite have a fast enough car to be able to make it around the track as fast as what Larson was doing. But still, he needed just enough to get into the playoffs, and he got it. But, here's the thing. This is something I needed to point out also. Kyle Larson, won the race. He dominated the race. And you think, okay, the playoff picture is all set with this going into the next round. Well, his triumph was just a step. It was a step in what you could refer to of study of superiority, as it could be called. And by the time that he crossed the finish line for the final time, he'd led those 462 laps. But here's the thing. He's not a shoe-in for the next round of the playoffs. He's into this round of the playoffs, but like a lock for the next round after that, No, he's going to have to fight for that. And considering they've had their ups and downs, it has caused issues for him. Kansas, it's caused him some problems in the past. The race that he might be overlooking Kansas for is looking at Talladega later on down the line. Also looking at that Roval. Those are going to be big, important races too, especially that Roval race coming up in October. That's going to be a big race right there. And so, he's not a shoe in. He's won this round of the battle, but he hasn't won the war. Let's just put it that way. He's won this part of the battle, but there's still a lot more to go.
Hey, let's talk about the Xfinity regular season finale, the Food City 300 Friday night.
Mhm.
Cole Custer, second win of the season, and he gets the regular season championship. So, big win for him and his team.
Yeah, it was. This is a team that, of course, is going by the wayside. I think he's going to be picked up by Haas Racing, the part of Stuart Haas and everything. If Stuart Haas is shutting down at the end of the season, but he's going to be picked up by him and his racing team program, and they're going to put him back into. I'm thinking maybe a Cup Series car. I'm not sure at this point, but right now, what happened in this race? Cole Custer stayed around where he needed to be at, and all the breaks came, and the bad luck breaks came for Justin Allgaier in this race. He literally had this race in his hand. He could have won it. He was the regular season, going to be the regular season champion until bad luck hit him all during the night. I mean, I was like two or three times he got either spun around, lost the rear deck of his race car. Some other things happened to him. He was very disappointed at the end of the race. He was just frustrated. I don't know if he thought that he was going to get this handed to him, but he sure found out that no, nothing's going to get handed to you, not in this sport, especially in the Xfinity Series. And hey, Dale Jr. ran the race too. I mean, Dale Jr. ran the race. He ran a very decent race, didn't win or anything, didn't come close to saying contending for the win there at the end of it, but he had a decent car. But we'll talk more about Dale Jr. here a little bit later on. But I just think I thought the Xfinity Series race was a really good race on Friday night.
And then Thursday night, a guy named Lane Riggs, who is not in the uh, Craftsman Truck Series playoffs. He might as well be. He's dominating the
Mm-hmm.
playoff season. He's got his second win in the playoffs with the win in the Uno 200.
Yeah, he took the lead on lap 121 of 200 during this race. And this UNO 200 race, this is put on by the University of Northern Ohio. They're an organization out of Ohio that goes and sort of like, I guess you heard about it when you were in school and so forth, of kids, if they were interested in going to diesel school or anything like that, if they wanted to go and do something with diesel engines. Well, this is like a race team. This is like for racing to kind of train you. Matter of fact, here in my hometown, there is a young man that I think has just graduated from UNO, and he's been working on a dirt track race cars is what he's been working on. But, here's the thing. Riggs wasn't in the playoffs, just like you mentioned, but he has been a spoiler here in the last couple of races going into the regular season, the end of the regular season for the Xfinity Series. He won at Milwaukee Mile on August 25th, which was a great win for him. But he said, my team's been incredible. We've learned so much going back to back in the playoffs. Makes me wish I was in the championship race, and I'm sure a lot of people probably wish that he was. It was his fourth consecutive top five finish, which just goes to show you this team is starting to hit their stride right when they need to. But unfortunately, it comes at the end of the regular season, and he's not going to be in the playoffs. Which somebody was asking me, I think at the race over the weekend, somebody asked me, said, "Hey, got a question for you. Does this end?" When the regular season's over with, is it just between the 16 drivers? No, it's not, between the 16 or whatever. This is the entire field that's out there. And all of the other drivers of that, 30, 40 car field or whatever it's going to be, they are spoilers. They can be spoilers for these guys that's trying to win and try to qualify for the next round of the playoffs. And so, this is just one of those things of being a spoiler here and being able to cause a little bit of trouble along the line, not meaning to. You don't tell him to not go out and win, but still, that's what he did. He went out and he won the race at Bristol on Thursday night.
Last question about the Bristol experience this past weekend. What was it like? What were the crowds like and everything else?
Crowd was really good on Saturday night. They were, about what they usually are for the Xfinity race and then also for the truck race. But Saturday night, I was impressed. There were a lot of things, a lot of people there, a lot of interest in the race. As a matter of fact, there was a lot of the tickets. For the Speedway Classic went on sale this past week, right about the time, right before the race. And of all things, we get an announcement saying, I think on Saturday, it was probably a little bit early, between 6 and 7:15, something like that. Mr. Red and the World Series Championship trophy is going to be in the media center. And I have to say that I was impressed with that. Had a chance to talk with one of the reps with the Cincinnati Reds, and then had a chance to have a photo taken with Mr. Red and that championship trophy. And I leaned over to Mr. Red and I told him, I said, well, you and I better look at it this way. This is the closest we'll ever be to this championship trophy this year, maybe for a while, the way things are going. But I talked to the guy with Cincinnati, and we were talking about the David Bell situation, and I was just wondering what in the heck's going to happen. Are they going to make a decision on him? I said he's been hot and cold, and then lo and behold, 1 week before the end of the season, they fire him, and so notch up another great thing on the Castanelli family for their, I mean, tremendous timing. 1 week. Why didn't you just wait till the end of the season? You're not going to make the playoffs. Wait till the end of the season. But the Castanelli family has to make a statement, and they certainly did with this one, firing David Bell. And it was kind of unfortunate, but that's kind of what we were talking about on Saturday night down there in the pits.
Yeah, any luster from Mr. Red being there, taken away with the firing of David Bell. No, that's I was going to ask you about that. Yeah, knowing
Yeah.
you're a Reds fan and knowing that game's coming up next year. I'm an Andrew Abbott, UVA alum, pitches for the Reds out of 10-10 season this year. Reds underperformed, but not enough to fire the manager with 5 games to go. That was kind of classless as
I
far as.
know.
Well,
It
Rod,
was it was terrible. I just didn't like it at all. So
for those who are watching this podcast, we're going to have another one as well. So make sure you watch that. We're going to go through some of the stuff that Rod heard around the media center and the garage all weekend. Lots of news and notes coming up there too. So don't miss that. But Rod, as always, thanks for your time and your insight.
appreciate it, Chris. Thanks.